Hey everyone, it's Avarice, and today I'm going to be building a deck for a very interesting clan. This clan being Link Joker. A little bit background before I get started on this. I used to hate Link Joker. The fiery passion. Like, this was my most hated clan. The reason why is because every time I played against it, I would just lost. It's basically an auto lose. And I couldn't build a single deck for it. No matter how I tried, no matter what cards I put in, it just wouldn't work, and I just always sucked. So this clan made me really, really salty. However, after I started playing a certain deck, this deck in fact, I got a very new appreciation for this. And honestly, I have come to realize that Link Joker is not as broken and oh, anyone can play it as I used to think. No, it is just as good as any other clan and has quite a few really good cards. That being said, let's get on with the deck build. Now, before I start this, I should say, I have gone through 3 starters for this deck. I'm not actually sure which one is the best to use. So far, my favorite is the one that is currently in this deck, Extending Black Ring Pleiades. This is ironic because the deck, for all intents and purposes, is a Star-vader deck. However, I don't use a Star-vader starter because the 2 Star-vader starters that I used to use weren't really working as well. This is more for the break ride that I used to use, but it can still also be very helpful because when you don't have one of your main vanguards in your hand, it can be a little bit of a problem. The other 2 that I used to use were Star-vader Brave Fang and Sirius Star-vader Selenium. Selenium I don't think I would really recommend because all he really is a 5k booster, and when your card becomes locked, he goes to your hand. It's not that great of a skill in the long run and can actually mess you up. Brave Fang, on the other hand, is that when the attack hits during the battle that it boosted, you choose 2 of the locked cards and they can't be unlocked during your next end phase. This card I actually might recommend because 1, it doesn't require a counterblast, and the other is that it can Omega lock cards. So that's the only in-video edit I would do, is that depending on whether you want to have a G3 Searcher or Brave Fang as your starter, it's really up to you. That is a personal preference, and honestly, I still go back and forth between the 2 to this day, depending on what mood I'm in. So this deck does change in that aspect. That being said, I'm just going to break tradition for a second and just say that Pleiades is a grade 3 searcher, so I'm not going to go back over him. And he's just your basic counterboss 1, put him to your soul. The next is your trigger lineup. I recommend 4 Star-vader Paradigm Shift Dragons. It's a wonderful critical trigger. Thank you for giving that to the Star-vaders. And then the other ones are 4 more criticals, Star-vader Sparkdoll, 4 Star-vader Stellar Garage, and 4 Vortex Star-vader Molybdenum. Now, you can use just about any of these that you want. You don't have to use these. Like, there are other criticals, heals, and draw triggers for Star-vaders, such as Star-vader Nebula Captor, Star-vader Meteor Liger, Star-vader Jailer Tail. I don't know where the other heal trigger is. I think she's up here. Yeah, Tellurium. You can really use those if you want, since they're all vanilla. The only one that you really should have is Paradigm Shift Dragon. But other than that, if you happen to have other vanillas, they don't have any effects. So just whatever you'd like. Next we get into grade 1s. The first one you're going to want is 2 Demonic Claw Star-vaders Lanthanum. 1 Eclipse Star-vader Charcoal. 4 Flower Blooming in the Vacuum Cosmolis, 2 Laser Star-vader Samarium, 2 Star-vader Boltline, and 2 Star-vader Crumble Mare. Going down to grade 2s, next we have 1 Companion Star-vader Photon, 2 Flashgun Star-vader Osmium, 2 Star-vader Mobius Breath Dragon, 4 Star-vader Sword Viper, 2 Starholder Dragon, and 1 Unrivaled Star-vader Radon. And then we go to G3s, and we have your break ride, which is Star-vader Infinite Zero Dragon, and then the main vanguard, which is Star-vader Venom Dancer. I do use strides for this deck, but they are not required. The only thing that I would say if you don't use strides is take out your grade 2 Starholder Dragon and replace it with something else. You can use a vanilla, you can use a different Star-vader, you can use really whatever card you want, but I would not recommend having, of course, Generation Break cards in there if you're not ever going to have a Generation Break. So that being said, the ones I use for strides are 2 Death Star-vader Quintessence Dragon, 2 Genesis Dragon Judgment Messiah, and 4 Nebula Dragon Big Crunch Dragon. The only card I really need to explain up here is Paradigm Shift Dragon. Like I said, I already explained Pleiades, and the others are vanillas. So Paradigm Shift Dragon has a really nice skill of being, of course, being able to go to the top of the deck, but more than that, if you have a Vanguard with Star-vader in its name and your opponent has a lock card, you can choose one of your rear guards in your back row and lock it, and then shuffle your deck. So that puts a critical trigger back into your deck, which is really nice, as well as locking one of your opponent's cards. The thing about this is your main Vanguard, if you use its skill, you can lock a card whenever you want on your turn, of course, as long as you're not in the battle phase. So that being said, Paradigm Shift Dragon really works well with Venom Dancer, who I will explain in a bit, but I really do recommend having this one and not just vanillas, since it is always nice to get those critical triggers back in. The next card to explain is Lanthanum, and when your opponent's rearguard is locked by any of your effects, and you have a Link Joker Vanguard, which you will, he gets plus 2,000 power. Considering that quite a few cards can get locked in one turn, this is really helpful, and he can actually get way up there in power. I only run 2 of him. You can run more if you want, but I've only seen the need to run 2. The next card is Eclipse Star-vader Charcoal. It's a bit risky only running 1 of him because he is your limit break enabler. He's the other one that if you want to run more than 1, I would recommend it, but my grade 1s are spread a bit thin because there are a lot of cards that are really helpful. There were 2 cards that was going to go between, and I could have 1 of one and 2 of the other, and that was the other one was Star-vader Crumble Mare. And the reason I went with Crumble Mare to have 2 is because you can use Crumble Mare a lot more than you can use Charcoal. Charcoal is only really when you limit break, and since there's only 1 limit break card, which is your break ride, you don't really need him as much as you need Crumble Mare, who is boosting a Legion unit, and you're going to be in Legion for most of the game, so I went with Power over a single time. If you don't want to run Charcoal at all, you don't have to, and if you don't, I would recommend either adding another copy of Crumble Mare or Lanthanum, just because that way, I mean, you're only going to need 1 Crumble Mare, but at the same time, the rest you can use for guarding, helping with strides, etc. That's the other thing you may have noticed. I don't use stride enablers in this because it is not a stride-heavy deck. There is only 1 Generation Break card in it, and it can easily be replaced if you don't want to run stride at all. This is focused mostly on Legion, so you will only be striding really to get cards in your hand, as well as if you really, really need to lock a unit and you're out of counterblasts. The next card is Laser Star-vader Samarium, and I only do run 2 of her. When she attacks, if the number of lock cards your opponent has is 2 or more, she gets plus 3,000 power. She's a very risky card to use. I tend to want to have grade 2s in my front row, so she's not going to be attacking all that much. She's another card that if you want to use her, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. There have been times when I have gotten to attack with her and have another card behind her, and she's a really nice 10k. But at the same time, your opponent does have to have 2 or more locked units, which, while is not difficult to get to, at the same time, it can take a bit. The other card I use is Flower Blooming in the Vacuum Cosmolus as my perfect guard. There is a Star-vader perfect guard. I believe there's actually more than 1, but the reason I use Cosmolus is the same reason I use just about any of these kinds of Sentinels, is that you can turn a card from your damage and turn it face up. This is good because this deck with Venom Dancer can get a little bit counterblast heavy, and you don't want to run out of counterblasts because if you do, then Venom Dancer is just in a lot of trouble. Next card is Star-vader Bolt Line, When an attack hits a Vanguard during the battle that he boosted, you choose one of your opponent's lock cards, and it can't be unlocked during the next end phase, which is it's a good way to get an Omega Lock on there. Omega Locks are really annoying, but they're so much fun when you get to use them yourself. Being Omega Locked is a horrible experience. But he is also a card you could have behind your Vanguard, as well as Crumble Mare. I would recommend one of these two only. None of the other ones would be all that helpful. Speaking of, the next one is Star-vader Crumble Mare, and it's a very basic Legion booster. When it boosts a Vanguard and Legion, it's a 10,000k booster, which is really nice in terms of power, so that you're going to be attacking for 30k every single turn, which can get a bit hard to block. That's almost the power of a boosted Stride. Grade 2s is Companion Star-vader Photon. When he's placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have the Vanguard with Star-vader in its name and your opponent has one locked card, you can choose one of your opponent's rearguards and lock it. I only run one of him because of the simple reason that he is a when placed effect, and there are better cards to run. However, he is also very good as a rearguard. And you can, of course, block and intercept with him, which is basically what you're going to want to do as soon as you place him on rearguard. You're going to want to get him out of there so that you can have one of your more continuous effects. Next is Flash Stun Garvate. Oh my god. Flash Gun Star-vader Osmium. You have fun saying that. When his attack hits a Vanguard, you get to Omega Lock a card. When hits effect, it's a little iffy since you're mostly going to be probably hitting with your Vanguard, but at the same time, again, Omega Lock between him and Bolt Line, it's a good combination. By the way, I shouldn't have to mention this, but if you can avoid it, don't put Bolt Line and Osmium in the same column. Considering they share an effect, you will not have a very good time with that. It won't do as much. I mean, if you absolutely have to, you can. There's nothing to say you can't, but it's not recommended. Since you could probably want to put Bolt Line in a different column and therefore have double the chance of Omega locking a card. Then we have Mobius Breath Dragon, Star-vader, Mobius Breath Dragon, and yeah, I found out something very interesting about this card. He has a Vanguard effect. When his attack hits a Vanguard, you can choose one of your rearguards and lock it. I run two of him and not two of Photon for very strange reasons. The reason I run two of Mobius Breath is because I have a higher chance that way of getting him as my Vanguard. Because after you get past your grade 2, I mean, as soon as you ride your grade 2, he's useless. He does make for good guarding and good strides, but it can be a little bit tough. The only thing that's really nice about him is he doesn't require a counterblast to use, and if you actually do manage to get him as your Vanguard, you can guess your opponent is probably either going to be locking or blocking, or you're going to be locking. Hey, see what I did there? That was so bad. Next is Star-vader Sword Viper, aka your Legion mate. When his attack hits a Vanguard, if your Vanguard's in Legion and you have a lock card, you can choose one of your rearguards and lock it. Again, nice, no counterblast needed. And once you Legion, you are probably going to have 3 of him in your deck, so you're going to be able to do that. It's also a when hit effect, so it's not going to be, you know, just a when placed like certain Legion mates are. I'm looking at you, Aglavale. Wonderful, wonderful card. And like I said, since you have Venom Dancer as your Vanguard, you are probably going to be having one of your opponents having a locked card every single turn. If you don't, well, we'll get to that later. Starholder Dragon is next, and he's very simple, Generation Break 1. When his attack hits, countercharge 2. The only reason I really do run him is because, like I said, this deck can get a little bit counterblast heavy. Then we have Unrivaled Star-vader Radon. I only have one of him again because he's just another very basic card. When he attacks, he gets plus 3,000 power until end of battle. He's nice for power, but it's not really as power-based as some of my other decks, i.e. my Liberators deck. But still, he's nice to get in there for those attacks, especially in your late game when your opponent isn't going to be taking as much damage from your rearguards. So that cards such as Osmium and Sword Viper aren't going to be nearly as effective. So cards such as Radon and Photon are really nice to have in late game, which is kind of ironic considering that there are way less of them. But I digress. Your next card you're going to want is when you have Infinite Zero Dragon. He's your break ride, and again, he's the second break ride that I actually used for this deck. My first one was Dharma Stadium. The only problem with him is that you have to discard a grade 3 from your hand, and it can be really difficult, especially when you really need all the grade 3s and you only have Venom Dancer as your other one. So I changed to Infinite Zero Dragon, plus the fact that he has a stride you can use. And the way it works is that when a Link Joker rides the unit, choose one of your rear guards in the front row and back row and lock them. And then, of course, give your Vanguard 2000 plus power. This is really nice because that locks 2 cards. And then if you couple that with Venom Dancer, it's awesome. That being said, Venom Dancer! One, can we all take a moment to just truly appreciate how freaking beautiful he looks? Thank you. Venom Dancer, he doesn't have a When Legions effect, which is nice because you can use all of his abilities more than once. His act is that when he has another unit in the center column, you can pay the cost and then choose a rear guard in your opponent's back row and lock it. Like I said, as long as your opponent doesn't only have cards in their front row, you can lock a unit just about every single time. If they do, yeah, he's a little bit harder, but you can still do it. His effect that I absolutely adore, though, and also the reason why stand triggers are pretty much pointless in this deck, is that when he is done attacking a Vanguard, if he's in Legion, you can pay the cost, choose up to one of your rear guards for each of your opponent's locked cards and stand it. This is the reason why you're always going to want to have locked cards on your opponent's field, because that way you can always stand cards. Usually you're going to want 2 so that you can stand an entire column. However, if you couple him with Infinite Zero Dragon when you first break ride, then you can stand a column plus 1 other card. So if you want to have someone like, say, Radon, who can attack a Vanguard as long as they're not overly powerful / get a trigger, then you can give plus 3000 power when he attacks, attack with your other column, and then attack with your Vanguard, counterblast 1, and if your opponent has 3 locked cards, you can stand Radon and your other column, giving you 2 more attacks. This is really helpful, and I love that it's not counterblast per card, because if it was, this would be almost impossible to use, but it's 1 counterblast for as many cards as your opponent has locked, which is really awesome. Then we go into our strides. Quintessence Dragon you can only use, well, you technically not, but you should only use when you have your break ride as your Vanguard. So if you can, try to get in at least 1 stride when you have Quintessence Dragon. And when you're waiting for Venom Dancer, if he's not in your hand and you didn't get him with your G3 search, then he's another really good card to have, because you can stride into him twice since there's 2 of him in the deck. And the way he works is you counterblast Soul Blast 1, and when he's placed on Vanguard, if you have Infinite in your Heart's card name, you choose back row and front row and lock them, and then if your damage zone is 4 or more, you will mega lock them. He's really going to only be used a second time if you just for some reason can't get Venom Dancer. But I would definitely try to use him at least once, especially considering the Omega Lock will work really well if you break ride. That is 5 locked cards, because that is Quintessence, then your break ride effect, and then Venom Dancer effect. You don't even need to use Venom Dancer at this point and save a counterblast, because all you really need is the 4 locked units, since you don't need stand behind your Vanguard. The ideal strategy for this is to use Quintessence Dragon when you're at 4 or 5 damage. Omega lock your cards, break ride the next turn from Infinite Zero into Venom Dancer, use Infinite Zero to lock 2 more cards, have 4, and then stand 2 rows with Venom Dancer. I have yet to pull this off, but I think it's possible, definitely possible. You just have to make sure that you time everything right. Your next stride is Genesis Dragon Judgment Messiah. When they attack its Vanguard, it's pretty standard, back row, lock it, and then choose up to 1 card on the field and unlock it. Obviously, since you're not playing Messiahs, you're not going to want to unlock things. That would be kind of silly, but you still get the ability to lock. Since it says up to, meaning you can choose 0, which is very nice. And then the main, I guess you get to say main stride, is Big Crunch Dragon. You counterblast 1, choose one of them face up, and if you have 2 or more face up G units in your G zone, you can choose a column and lock that column. It is a once per turn, so you can't use it more than once, which is a little bit sad, but at the same time, it's probably a good thing, since this is, in fact, an Omega Lock card. And it's conditionless, it's just an Omega Lock. There is nothing added onto it, so no matter what, if you use this card, there is going to be a column Omega Locked. So, that was my Venom Dancer deck. My videos just keep getting shorter, and I'm not sure how the first one took 40 minutes. I probably didn't edit it. Oops. So this one was fairly standard. It's mostly going to rely on Venom Dancer a lot, and if you don't have that in your hand, you are in a lot of trouble, because he's the reason I don't run stand triggers. He's basically a stand trigger as your Vanguard, which is really nice. But at the same time, it can mess you up a little bit. Like I said with your starters, you can really use whatever you want. Try to make sure they work with the deck. For example, Robin Knight, I wouldn't use him considering it's back row again, and you're going to be locking mostly in your back row, so you can only lock so many cards. There are only 3 spaces, unless for some reason Bushiroad decides to do a back row Legion. That would be interesting. So I believe that is all I have to say about this. Tune in next time for another deck build. I'm eventually going to get around to my main clan. 3 videos done, still haven't touched it. So maybe next video I will be doing that. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.